The work of Paul Valery, it stands out as one of France's greatest poets. The American critic Ivor Winters said the cemetery by the sea, Le Cimetière Marin, was one of the two greatest short poems ever written. I would certainly agree with him. The collected works of Valery amount to no more than 100 pages. He was perhaps one of the most reluctant great poets of all time. He was very unwilling to publish anything, and great pressure had to be put on him by, amongst others, André Gide, to agree to be published. His interest was extremely peculiar. He was interested in watching the procedures of his own mind, and he wrote something like 400 or 500 pages of notebooks with this strange perceptions of the ego. And I do believe the French government is in the process of actually publishing these. But one's interest as a poet and as a reader is on these short poems. For a long time I enjoyed a poem of his called The Spinner by Filleur's, and then I seemed to lose it. And I think this was because I thought it was by Mallarmé, his master. I looked in vain again and again, and I couldn't find it. Then finally I realised it was not by Mallarmé, but by Valery. The difficulty in translating Valery is that he writes in very, very strict metrical forms. And if you translate them into prose, as I would prefer, this is the way in which the marvellous translations of Rimbaud were published by Penguin in the translation of Francis Scarfe in the 60s. The problem is there that with Valery you lose a sense of the dominating rhythmic force. There is no exact way you can win in this way. I'd like to begin by reading La Filleur's The Spinner. I read the English first. I think it's very unfortunate, but the sticking to exact rhythms in English. Peter Dale did a magnificent piece of work. He's been working on this translation for many, many years, and it is very good indeed, but there is a slight problem with verse 1, where he translates Le rouet ancien qui ronfle la grisée. And he translates this as the old wheel whizzes till she's in a wooze. This to me does not sound a particularly good way of translating a very Mallarméan poet. Nevertheless, we have to stick with this. The poem begins with an image where the colour blue, the image of the colour blue, is right in the middle of the first line. This is a particular trait of Mallarmé, and blue is associated not only and obviously with the sky, but with the eternal, and particularly with the eternal in poetry. The Spinner. Assise la fileuse au bleu de la croisée, où le jardin mélodieux se dodeline, le rouet ancien qui ronfle la grisée. Las, ayant bu l'azur, de fier la câline, chevelure à ses doigts, si faible et massive, elle songe, et sa tête petite s'incline. Un arbuste et l'air pur font une source vive qui, suspendue au jour, délicieuse, arrose de ses perles de fleurs le jardin de l'oisive. Une tige où le vent vagabond se repose, courbe, le salut vint de sa grâce étoilée, dédiant magnifique au vieux rouet sa rose. Mais la dormeuse, file une laine isolée, mystérieusement l'ombre frêle sa tresse. Aux filles de ses doigts longs et qui dorment fiers, le songe se dévide avec une paresse angélique et sans cesse au doux fuset crédule. La chevelure ondule au gré de la caresse. Derrière tant de fleurs, l'azur se dissimule. Filleuse de feuillage et de lumière sainte, tout le vert se meurt, le dernier ambre brûle. Ta sœur, la grande rose où sourit une sainte, parfume ton front vague au vent de son haleine innocente, et tu crois languir. Tu es éteinte au bleu de la croisée où tu fuyais la laine. Translation: the spinner sits in the blue of the casement views, where the melodious garden's dandling, speeding, the old wheel whizzes till she's in a wooze, on azure drunk. Tired from spinning wheedling hair that evades her frail fingers, dreamy thing, a little hair nods forward, hardly heeding, a shrub and the pure air forming a living spring, suspended in the light, its delicious pose, with fallen petals the idler's garden showering. One stem, where the wandering wind comes to repose, bows a vain salute to its starry grace, dedicating the old wheel, resplendent, its rose. But the spinner spins a lone yard, a trace, mysteriously, a faint shadow self-twines, through her long sleeping fingers spun apace, with an angelic indolence the dream winds, and ceaselessly trusting the mild spindle, sways the undulant hair to please the caress that binds. Beyond so many flowers, the azure foils the gaze, spinning that engirdling leaves and light ensail. The whole sky is green and dying, the last trees ablaze. Your sister, the great rose, with saint-like smile, perfumes your vague brow with wafts of her full innocent breath. You sense, you droop, you faded while in the blue of the casement you were spinning wool. There is a strange mesmeric quality with that poem of Valéry's. Clearly the image of an elderly woman sitting at a spinning wheel against a casement looking out onto a blue sky. The word blue I think is used 3 times. Bleu, azur, it means more or less the same. And there is a kind of hypnotic quality which somehow matches the movement of the spinning wheel. Whenever I read that poem by Valery, I'm reminded immediately of Monet. There's that serenity, not the serenity of the countryside exactly, not the noise and bustle of the city, something that somehow belongs to the particular past of France, to the past of the 19th century, and to the particular greatness of the Impressionists, and particularly Monet. Clearly, Valéry's greatest point is the graveyard by the sea. And it's very sad that I cannot actually get the translation I wanted to get. which is by the English poet James Kirkup. Although Kirkup's poems were reprinted in full in 4 volumes by the University of Austria Press, Kirkup himself said it was probably beyond anyone to actually reproduce his entire translations, which would be probably, well, certainly if you include his prose works, thousands and thousands of pages long. And this is indeed a great sadness. The problem with Le Cimetière Marin is that it depends hugely upon the rhythmic structures. And I think in this poem, Peter Dale does actually make this work. What the poem is actually about is very difficult to say. It is a poem essentially of classical splendour, a poem where classical splendour is reproduced with a strange and hugely powerful rhythm. And marvellously, in this translation, Peter Dale does manage to somehow get that rhythm across. Though the poem is simply too long to read, both in French and in English, I'll have to simply choose the first stanzas with the first stanzas of the translation. Ce toit tranquille, où marchent des colombes, entre les pins palpitent, entre les tombes. Midi le juste y compose de feu la mer, toujours recommencée. Ô récompense après une pensée, quand l'on regarde sur le calme des dieux. Quel pur travail, des fins éclairs consument, mon diamant d'imperceptible écume, et quel pain semble se concevoir, quand sur l'abîme un soleil se repose, ouvrage pur d'une éternelle cause, le temps senti et le songe et savoir. Stable tresson, temple simple à Minerve, maste calme et visible réserve, ô sourcilleuse, œil qui garde en toi tant de sommeil, sous un voile de flamme ô mon science. Édifice dont l'âme, mais comble d'or aux 1000 tuiles toi, temple du temps qu'un seul soupir résume. À ce point pur je monte et je m'accoutume, tout entouré de mon regard marin, et comme au Dieu mon offrande suprême, la scintillation sereine sème sur l'altitude un dédain souverain. Comme le fruit se fond en jouissance, comme en délice il change son absence, dans une bouche où sa forme se meurt. Je hume ici ma future fumée, et le ciel chante à l'âme consumée, le changement dérive en rumeur. Beau ciel, vrai ciel, regarde-moi qui change, après tant d'orgueil, après tant d'étranges oisivetés, mais pleine de pouvoir. Je m'abandonne à ce brillant espace sur les maisons des morts mon ombre passe, qui m'apprivoise à son frêle mouvoir. L'âme exposée aux torches du solstice, je te soutiens, admirable justice, de la lumière aux âmes sans pitié. Je te rends pur à ta place première. Regarde, toi, mais rendre la lumière se pose d'ombre une morne moitié. Oh, pour moi seul, à moi seul en moi-même, auprès d'un cœur, aux sources du poème, entre le vide et l'événement pur, j'attends l'écho de ma grandeur interne, amère, sombre et sonore, si terne, sonnant dans l'âme un creux toujours futur. Sais-tu, fausse captive des feuillages, golfe mon jeu de ces maigres grillages, sur mes yeux clos, secrets, éblouissants. Quel corps me traîne à sa fin paresseuse, quel front l'attire à cette terre use, une étincelle y pense à mes absents. There is no quiet way to read that poem of Valéry's. It goes back to the great rhythms of the great French dramatist Ronsard. It is essentially a poem to be actually declaimed, and I think Peter Dale does wonderfully get this across in his translation. This tranquil roof, where the doves tread, quakes among pines, among the dead, there. Noon the just, with fire composes, the sea, all was restored. Oh, afterthought, what a reward, a look of the gods' calm discloses. What pure deeds of fine glints consume many a gem of unseen spume, and what peace seems conceived as so, where on the deep as suns at pause, pure works of an eternal cause, time sparkles and the dreams to know, such treasures, simple shrine to Miniver, massive calm and clear reserve, haughty sea, aye, under a woof of fire, concealing so much sleep, my silence in the soul a keep, but thousand-tiled, ridged golden roof, summed in one sigh, temple of time. To this pure point I make the climb and settle, ringed by seaward vision. As to the gods, my supreme gift, this tranquil scintillation drift sows on the height a sovereign derision. As fruit melts in enjoyment's bite, changing its absence to delight, within the mouth where its form dies, I sniff here, smoke my future brings, to the soul consumed the sky sings, change to the shores where tumults rise. Beautiful sky, true sky, I change, look, after such pride, such strange lassitude, yet so full of strength I give myself to this shining space, crossing their dead in their dwelling place. My shade subdues me to its frail length. My soul exposes to solstice fire, I bear you, justice to admire, of ruthless light. I give you pure, back to your first place outright. Look at yourself. To give back light implies a half in shade obscure. To me, in me, for me apart, at the poem's source next to the heart, between the void and pure event, I wait my inner depth to resound. Dark, bitter, sonorous cistern, sound in the soul a pit, yet imminent. Feigned captive of the leaves, do you know, gulf gnawing this frail lattice row, secrets dazzling, my eyes shut blind, what body drags me to its bound? What brow draws it to this bone ground? A spark there brings my dead to mind.